Gentleman running the camera, do I need to do anything for audio? I'm good? Okay, excellent. All right, ladies and gents, if you can hear me, let's do that synchronous clapping thing again. Hopefully you guys are really quiet. Okay, I like the clapping thing anyway. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Okay, there was a straggler. But much better. Okay, we'll get it by the end. So, take your packet, and for most of these, I'm going to be going over them on the projector at the same time as you guys practice with them. But this first one's really simple, so we can just get started with this one right away. This is a game called Say 16. Now, all of the games in these class have some sort of strategy that will make it so that if you know how to play, you always win. And I've chosen a set of games, very good set of games, particularly the inclusion of NIM was a very purposeful choice. These games appear everywhere. Not necessarily in their whole form or with the same numbers. Like it might not be with the number 16 the way that I'm going to use it. It might be with the number 5 or 10 or something else. But most of the games that you play that are strategic will have a strategy. It's the strategy of some combination of the games that we're going over. Now, it may be a very tricky combination, and like figuring it out is by no means easily. At the end of this class, I'm going to tell you at least a couple games where even though there exists a strategy to always win, nobody has found it yet. We've proven that there is one, and we still don't know it. Yeah, there are actually a lot of games like that. But this first one is what you call strong solved. We know exactly how to play, or at least the math community does, and you guys are going to too as well by the end of like, I'd say about 10 minutes from now. All of you will be able to play this perfectly. All right, so the first game, Say 16, very simple rules. Your goal is to say 16. Get out of your system. It's a big group of people. On the count of 3, pretend like you're winning the game. 1, 2, 3.
16!
Very good. But I'm going to make it much harder. I'm going to make it much harder than just, being able to shout 16 faster than your neighbor. Now, this is a pairs game. So I want you guys to look at the rows and to try to clump together so that you're in pairs. And if you're alone, like Kent, you're alone, it's very sad. And you're alone too. I'm going to have you guys pair up with someone. You're going to need to pair for most of the games today. So redistribute just a little bit, scooting right or left, so that you're in pairs. And when you're in a pair, let me know by raising your hand.
There is none.
You guys are good. What? Okay, so you need someone. So I'm going to have oh wait, actually, you don't have to. All right.
So unless there's another one somewhere. Because there isn't.
Am I plugged in?
But, your computer has a
Yep. This is not so appreciate the PPA. All right, ladies and gents, if you can hear me, clap 3 times. Raise your hand if you are unpaired. Okay, let's hope there are an even number of people. Wait, you're sitting next to one person. Isn't he your partner? Raise your hand if you are unpaired, if you do not have a person. Okay, so in the orange shirt, can you move to next to him in the white shirt? Okay, your hand's still up? Sorry. Oh, and your hand's still up. This is perfect. All right, so can both of you sit in these 2 seats by the pole? All right, perfect. You're great. Is there anyone else? Anyone I missed? Oh, I missed you. Okay, you're going to be my partner. You're going to play with me right now. Here we go.
What's your name?
Oh, good. so I can just tell you. My name is Zandra Vinegar.
I'm Paul.
Okay. Vinegar like the condiments. All right, so what's your name? Vincent? Victor. All right, ladies and gents, give Victor and me your full attention. We are going to play one demo game of Say 16 for you. So you now have a partner. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to be very nice to Victor. Victor, I am incredibly competitive. And if I can win this game, I will. But I'm going to give you one bit of advantage. I'm going to let you choose if you'd like to be first player or second player. Which would you prefer, first player or second player? All right. Victor has chosen to be the second player. Now here's how the game works. On your turn, you're sort of collaboratively counting together. And on your turn, you can say up to 3 numbers, and you must say at least once. You can say 1, 2, or 3 numbers on your turn. The first person has to start with 1, and then keep counting from there. So I could say 1, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3. And then Victor, you have to pick up wherever I stopped and say 1, 2, or 3 numbers yourself. So for example, the game could go 1, and then you could say 2, 3. And then I could say 4, 5, 6, and you could say 7. And I could say 8, 9, and then you could say 10, 11, and I could say 12, and you could say 13, 14, and I could say 15, 16. All right, I made myself win, but let's see if you can beat me, if you're allowed to actually make your choices. So everyone, it's really hard to hear, like a student in the audience. This room is projected so that it's easy to hear me, but hard to hear him. So you're gonna have to shout, and you should all give him your full attention. So I'm gonna start this off by saying 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll say 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. So I warned you, if you make, this again is the mathematical word, this game is stressful, which means if you make even one mistake, I can beat you. But there is a strategy where if you know which player to be, first or second, and you play with perfect strategy, you can always win this. So the first step to figuring this out is give this game 2 shots. So use the first 2 game boards on your sheet, and someone else won't use any on theirs, that's fine. Try this game twice and keep track of what happens. Keep track of who says what. Try it. Oh, I'm so sorry about all the running. Thank you so much for doing it. Good, I'm on. What? Nope, that's the left. Oh, the center is going to be this one. if I could get the middle one to drop, that'd be better. But if you can figure it out for me, that's great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear me, please clap once. If you can, oh no, this doesn't work. Never mind. All right, so if you can hear me, please clap twice. All right, so the first big vocab word that I'm going to tell you about is called a poison point. So it's a point in the game where you know when you get given that position by your opponent, you just know you're going to lose. It's you might still have choices left.
If you get stuck at 12.
But have you ever heard the phrase "pick your poison"? Yeah, it's like you've got a whole bunch of things, and they're all going to eventually lead to your death, or in this case, your loss, right? And one poison point of this game, the latest one, is what number? What can you get given?
12.
Yeah, the number 12. As soon as if your opponent says 12 and then stops, you sit there being like, well, I could say 13, and what would they do then?
14, 15, 16.
Or I could say 13, 14, and they would finish it. Or I could do almost all the work for them, and I could say 13, 14, 15, but I can't quite reach 16, right? I'm only allowed to say 3 numbers, and 16 is 4 away from 12. So if I can get to that point where I've given my opponent 12, I've given my opponent the poison, I've won. So the interesting thing is that this reduces what is a more complicated game that most people can't figure out in their heads right away. This whole Say 16 game. If you want to win Say 16, do you know how you do it? You do it by winning Say 12. And now that you've got that concept, okay, if I want to win Say 16, I win Say 12. Think about it for a second. How do you win Say 12? Just think. Yes. You win Say 12. That's good enough. Let's just try it. 2 boards, it'll be fine. You win Say 12 by winning Say 8. How do you win Say 8?
Say 4.
Say 4. How do you win Say 4? No, it's not by saying 1. In fact, if you say 1, you don't win Say 4.
Say 0. You always have to be player 2.
In a sense, it's Say 0, but what it really means is it tells you which player you want to be. Which player do you want to be? Second. So this is definitely the simplest game we're going to cover today. Let me go through my introduction real fast. Oh yeah, you guys want to try it now, right? All right. If you can hear me, clap twice. The reason that I don't want to just say go ahead and try it is because what's the first thing that's going to happen if I do that? You guys are both going to want to be player 2, right? So in this particular game, player 2 has what's called the winning strategy. Now, really quickly, because I made these intro slides, my name is Zandra Vinegar, and I've lived in California for only a short time. I have a whole bunch of interests, and I made like a mosaic of them. Here are some of the highlights. I was born in North Carolina, so that's like the big stretch in the timeline. Then I went to MIT and I studied mathematics, and I majored in math. I graduated about 2 years ago. Then I worked at the Museum of Math in Manhattan for about 2 years designing some education curriculum for them and teaching. And from August 2014 to present, so a little bit less than a year, I've been a recreational math teacher teaching for after-school programs all across the Bay Area. I love to teach. I like to design and build things. I built all my own furniture. I like hiking and backpacking, and I also really like to cook. There we go. All right, so this class is how to win all the time and not by cheating. So these games are ones that have strategy, because if it's just random and we're not cheating, you can't really, without cheating, make yourself always win a coin flip. It's basically the definition of the game that you shouldn't always win if it's random. But for these purely strategic games like Say 16, if you know the right strategy, and sometimes it's deceptive. Most people, if asked which player gives you an advantage, most people would say it's usually the first player. But in fact, a lot of games, or for every first player game, I can construct a game where the second player has a perfect strategy, where it's the second player who has the advantage. Yes?
What about in tic-tac-toe?
In tic-tac-toe is strange because necessarily there's ties, right? And if there are ties, then rather than lose, each player would rather tie, right? And in tic-tac-toe, it happens to be the case that there is no perfect strategy. Both players can force a tie. Neither player can force a win. But that's a good question. And tic-tac-toe is this kind of game. If you defined that a tie went to like the first player or something like that, then the game would be a first player game. All right, here we go. Poison points were the first vocab term that I gave you guys. A poison point is when you know you've lost if it's your turn. And so your goal, and this is the big first concept of this class, the goal is to give your opponent a poison point. And then if you can figure out how to do that, you sort of are reinventing the game. You're resolving to, instead of just trying to win, trying to give them a poison point. And that tends to be a slightly smaller game. And if you figure out how to, set up a poison point for that game, then you have a slightly smaller game. And then you have to set up a poison point for that game, and you have a slightly smaller game. So you build back up to the very first move, starting with the last thing you need to do to set up a poison point. So that first step is finding a poison point at the end of the game. Now, for this one, that first poison point was 12. There's no good response when you're just given the number 12 and your opponent has stopped. And what you guys realized is that you can, if winning say 16 can be accomplished by winning say 12, then to win say 12, what we do is win say 8. To win say 8, we win say 4. To win say 4, we choose to be the second player. This is going to be the form that creating these strategies takes. Because I don't know all the games that you guys want to win, so I figure my best shot at getting you to win all the time is to show you strategies for making strategies for any game. So I've picked 3 of what I think are the most powerful general games in math, and I'm going to show you guys how to always win those. Quick question. So chess is unsolved. Even though we know that one of the 2 players must have a winning strategy, unless the game can tie somehow by timing out, in that case, one player must have a path to success, but the game is too long. And so even though we found ways, in end games, have you ever seen it's possible for one player to win in 4 moves? How do they do it? Yeah, we know how a lot of games might end with a poison point, but there are too many ways to get to them. So no one knows how to always win chess from the beginning just because the games are so long. Now, I'm not going to take too many questions because I've got to go fast. I've only got you guys for another half an hour. Big idea, solve games by finding a poison point at the end, and then consider this slightly simpler game, set up the poison point. Set up 12 in the case of, say, 16. And then repeat that. In order to figure out how to win, say, 12, repeat finding a poison point. In that case, the poison point for, say, 12 is 8. Right, and the poison point for 8 is 4. There we go. Now, say 21 is actually part of an infinite family of games where you can generalize really nicely on 2 parameters. One is 16 was kind of arbitrary. You guys felt that, right? Why was 16 so special? Well, I happen to like the number 16. But in fact, this game can be played with the goal being to say 20 or say 21. And the strategy then changes. So we're not going to do this in this session. But using the same technique for working out the optimal strategy, you can figure out how to always win, say 20, say 21, say 1053. You can use this for anything. You can also change the number of numbers that you're allowed to say on your turn. So when we were playing, you could say up to 3 numbers on your turn. The strategy changes if you're allowed to say up to 4 numbers on your turn, or up to 17 numbers on your turn. And this actually creates a really nice pattern of number theory if you figure out how to win this entire infinite set of games. You want to use the same sort of techniques to find the strategy, but once you see the pattern, you will know how to win, just right off the bat, an infinite family of games. Yes?
So then, I think the formula would be...
Oh, shh. Don't give it up. All right, so next game. We're going to move through these quickly because I want to get to my 3 favorite, the most powerful games in math. At least I think they're awesome. All right, the next game is NIM. Turn to that sheet. It should be just the back side of the sheet you were playing on. All right, again, this is a 2-player game. Again, it's completely strategic. That's necessary because if there was randomness involved, I couldn't tell you how to always win. But with NIM, no randomness, I'm going to give you a strategy to always win these. Now, the strategy for this one is hard to understand. But this game, the reason I chose to cover it is because it will appear everywhere. It's very general. Now, this is one example of a game of NIM. The way you play, it's kind of like playing a whole bunch of games of, say, 16 all at once, where you've got, say, letters and numbers and Greek letters and, I don't know, Arabic numbers. Oh, no, those are the same as our numbers. All right, so you've got, 4 or 5 or 17 different kinds of numbers that you're sort of counting along. And your goal is to be the last person to say the absolute last number in all of them. Now, I kind of think that that's hard to think of as a talking abstraction. I think it's easier to think about with stones and removing them. But think about say 16 for a minute. We could have put it with stones, where on your turn, you start off with a pile of 16 stones, and on your turn, you're allowed to take 1 of them, 2 of them, or 3 of them away. Do you see how that's effectively what you were doing? Taking 1, 2, or 3 of the 16 stones away, and the winner was the person who got to take the last stone. This is the same game made, well, in this particular case, made 5 times over. And there's a different number of initial stones in each box, and instead of restricting the number of stones you can take on your turn, you can take any number of stones on your turn, but you're only allowed to take them from 1 box. So, for example, I'm going to play myself for this one. So player 1 is me, and player 2 is also me. And my boxes have respectively 4, 2, 6, 7, and 4 stones. I'm going to take that one. So this is player 1, takes that 1 stone. Then player 2 takes that stone. Player 1 takes, ooh, I was greedy that time. I took like all 6 out of 7 of them, but I left 1. All right, player 2 takes those 6. Player 1 took those 4. Player 2 then realized they could do something clever and took those 2. Player 1 looked at this and was like, oh gosh, all right, fine, and took that one. Player 2 took this. Player 1 got the last stone. So player 1 just won this game. My question for you guys is, yes, I won. Okay, I also lost, but I won. Player 1 won this game. Does that mean that player 1 will always win? No. No, there could be a strategy that player 2 could have used, or player 1 could have actually had a strategy and just not known it, played randomly. Your goal in the next, let me give you guys 4 minutes, is to play this game at least once and up to twice with your partner. See if you can win. Play it once as player 1 and then once as player 2. You can take any number of stones on your turn, but you can only take them from 1 bin. The rules are wrong. Lights. Be on the lookout for the poison points. Wrap up your current game.
Oh, I see.
An 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Don't worry, we're not done with NIM yet. NIM is the trickiest game that we're going to talk about today. It's also the one that I think appears in the most different kinds of places. So, let's try the same strategy finding strategy. I know it's sort of weird. It's a strategy for finding strategies. We are trying to find a poison point at the end of the game. What is one point, one like a state of the boxes that you can get past where you know you've lost? You don't have to use all the boxes. You can have most of them be empty. In fact, if it's at the very end of the game, most of them probably are empty. But what do the non-empty ones look like? Yes?
When there's like one stone in
Each
like,
of, how many?
two cards.
Each of 2. Nice. That's perfect. Something like this. So think about it for a second. If this is what the game looks like, and you get handed the boxes, you could take the one on the right, in which case your opponent gets the one on the left. You could take the one on the left, your opponent gets the one on the right. This is a poison point. Do you feel it the same way? You get a choice, but the choice is not really any good. Your opponent has a response to either of them. So this poison point is pretty simple, but it's also very late in the game. So if we want to figure out how to get to this poison point, how can you set this up? What are some options? There might be multiple ways to do it. There might be 2. What's one state, and this is a little weird, because you're not just adding one stone, and that's what you hope they give back to you. But you don't get to choose that. You've got to add necessarily at least 2 stones, because at least 2 moves have to happen. You want to know the poison point just before this one. Think of that one as like the 12, right? You want to know the 8, the state that you want to pass to your opponent, so that they'll put it in that state for you, or at least put it in some other state that you'll definitely win. What's one way to do it? Yeah. Yeah, you could add 1 stone to each box. I'm not sure which order I put these in. Nope, oops. Well, you could add 1 stone to each box. The other option is that you could add 2 stones to 2 new boxes. Think about it for a second. If you got this state right here, and your opponent takes any 1 stone, you take any other stone, and you're at your first poison point. Or down here, this one's a little bit trickier, because there are 2 ways it could go. If it's your opponent's turn now, they could either take 1 from a box, or they could just grab both of them. What's your response if they take 1? What do you do? Yeah. Yeah. If they've taken this one, what do you do? Yeah, you have to set up your poison points. And it's super important when you're planning strategies that you remember, because you could mess it up then, right? If they took this one and then you took both of those, you'd be giving the game away. Now, you'd probably notice that, but you've got to be careful, because your goal isn't just to get to a better state, a state that seems better. It's this absolutely rigorous progression, this deterministic track that you're taking poison point to poison point to poison point. And if you ever deviate from it to something that's not a poison point, that you haven't already proven there's no way out of, then your opponent might be able to wiggle free. So, if they take this one, you take this one. What if they take both of these 2?
And you take both of them.
You take both of the others. All right. So this is sort of the 2, in a sense, the 2 8s for this game, right? The 2 1 level up poison points. Now, at this point, you might just, you might try to do this the long way. You might be like, okay, these are my 2 hopes now. How can I add 2 or more additional stones to guarantee getting to these states? And you could keep doing that over and over and over again. That's going to take a really long time. So at this point, what you're really looking for is sort of the same way as in Say 16. You realize that the jump was always a step of 4, right? That there's a pattern to what the poison points are. And in fact, in NIM, there's a very cool pattern, but it's tricky even just to understand it. So here we go. This is going to be the hardest 5 minutes of the class. It's also, we've only got about 10 minutes left. This 5 minutes, though, is like the real brain cruncher, because I've got to teach you binary.
Yay!
All right. Now, we're not using it the normal way, but you need to understand, binary is a system of numbers where instead of having 7 digits, you only have 2. You've got 1 and 0 to work with. And so instead of using all the combinations of the digits 0 through 9, you're using the combinations of just 0 and 1. So 1 is a whole bunch of zeros and then 1. Or you can really get rid of all the initial zeros if you wanted to. 2 is 0, 0, 1, 0. Now think about it for a second. If you were looking at just the numbers in base 10 that only have 1s or 0s, 1 is the smallest one, I guess unless you count 0. And after 1, the next smallest number that only contains 1s and 0s is 10. And then what's the next smallest number? 11. Don't forget 11. After 11, though, it takes a big jump all the way to 100, then 101. Now, in this case, though, you can think about constructing them that way, but these numbers actually have a meaning to them in binary. So what's going on is we're using base 2 instead of base 10. If you remember, way back when you learned like what base 10 meant, someone gave you a number like 3,254, and they told you this meant 3,000s, 200s, what else? 5 10s, 4 1s. Excellent. In base 2, 1 1 0 1 means 1 8, 1 4, and these are the powers of 2. So what does this 0 mean?
0.
0 2s. So it's the powers of 2 instead of the powers of 10. It's a place value system where you would have 1 8, 1 4, no 2s, 1 1, aka the number in base 10 would be 13. And if you think about it, I hope you guys got to play with these blocks when you were learning this. You've got your 1s, your 10 stick, your 100 sheet, your thousands giant cube. You could have the same thing and the same trading rules, but with powers of 2. You'd have your 1s block, your 2 stick, your 4 sheet, your 8's cube, and the next place up would be what? The next power of 2, 16. Then what? 32, then 64. Yeah, you keep doubling. You don't have to keep doubling, though. All right, here we go. This is where it gets insane. You guys ready? All right, if you're ready, snap 3 times. That's okay. If you're ready, clap twice. Here we go. The first step, I'm going to just teach you the ultimate strategy for winning NIM. And this game is hard. This game, if people haven't been taught this strategy, you can probably use it against, everyone you meet for the next year. And unless they happen to have seen this math, you will always beat them at NIM. NIM also just appears in a lot of places where you get to progress any part of the game as much as you want, but you have to choose what part you're working on. This is a part of a whole lot of strategy games. So here we go. What you do is the following. First step, you write the binary representation of each bin. So what does the number 4 look like in binary? How many 1s are there?
1.
No 1s. You don't need any because you can put everything into the 4's place. Just sort of like 100 is 1 0 0 because 100 is a power of 10. 4 is a power of 2. So in fact, 4 looks like this. Oh, here we go. It looks like a 0 1 0 0. No 8s, 1 4, no 2s, 1 1s. So think about it for a second. What is 2 going to look like? 0 0 1 0. No 8s, no 4s, 1 2, no 1s. What is 6 going to look like? Keep in mind that 6 is 4 plus 2.
0 1 1 0.
Nice. 0 1 1 0. Good job. You guys are getting it. All right, so now you have to add 1 to this to get 7. What's that going to be all together?
1 1 1 1.
Perfect. All right, and lastly, we have another 4, which is still 0 1 0 0. All right, so now that you have these in binary, you're going to do something very strange with them. You're going to put them all in a column and take what's called the NIM sum. The NIM sum is like a sum without carrying, where you only therefore care about if the number of 1s is even or odd. If the number of 1s in a column is odd, you put a 1. As if you were, say, adding these all up, you would get 1. You put that 1 down there. However, if you add them all up and it's even, all even numbers end in a 0. So if you're not carrying, an even number has a last digit of 0, no 1s. And in the case of NIM addition, you just don't carry at all. If it's even, you put a 0. If the number of 1s is even, put a 0. If the number of 1s is odd, put a 1. I forgot to count them. How many 1s are in this second place value?
3.
Yeah, 3. So should I put a 1 or a 0?
1.
A 1. All right, how many 1s are in the next column?
0.
4. So should I put a 1 or a 0? There you go. I know you skipped a step. It's cool. All right, and then if there are ever all zeros, that's still 0 is an even number. I know that seems weird, but it is. It is definitely divisible by 2. All right, so you've done this for all of them. Here's the strategy. That was the hard part. Here's the strategy. This is called the nim sum, and if the nim sum is all zeros, if it's literally just 0 at the bottom, choose to be the second player. If the nim sum is not 0, choose to be the first player. Then on your move, since you've chosen to be the first player only if the nim sum is non-zero, your goal is to make it 0. The poison points of nim are all of the game states where the nim sum is 0. The simplest one of those is flat out the empty game, right? There are no stones. If you get given the game in that state, you know you've lost, right? There's no more stones for you to take. But there are lots and lots of nim states, in fact, infinitely many, where the nim sum is 0, even though there are still a lot of stones left. For example, what could I do? How could I take away some number of stones from some pile to make the nim sum, which is now 0011? Now, what number is 0011 in base 10? It's 3. So if I want to get rid of that 3, how can I pull it off? What can I do? Well, yeah, here's one way. I can find a number that has these 2 1s on it, and I can get rid of 3 from it. I can get rid of, say, these 3. So you choose to be player 1 because the nim sum is non-zero. Then your goal is to make the nim sum 0. What can you do to make it 0? You can find a box that has that 1 1 at the end and take out 3 stones. That changes this from 0111 to 0100, which changes the nim sum. Look at it really carefully. This number is now even. This number is now even. It changes it to all zeros. Do you see it? All right, that's the hard part. From here on out, it's really just repeat this. The same way as you're always trying to get to the multiples of 4 and say 16, you're always trying to get to nim sum states that are 0. The tricky thing is proving that it's always possible to do this. I'm not going to do that proof for you, but there is always a way. And then, when it's your opponent's turn, they'll be given a board where the nim sum is 0. No matter what they do, they will necessarily make it non-zero. So your opponent messes it up. Say they take these, all 6 of those. See how that changes things? They've made the nim sum into 0110. Yeah, this is tricky. It's tricky, and it's how you will win every single one of these games. So look at this board state and figure out what would you do to make the nim sum 0. You've got to get rid of these 2 1s, which means you need to change both the 2's place and you need to change the 4's place. How can you pull that off? Try things. Try removing some number of stones from one of the bins. What would it do? Yes? Oh, that's okay. We're going to end in about 2 minutes. You can go now, though. All right, ladies and gents, the answer. Let me reveal it, and then I'm going to let you guys leave. The answer is as follows. You can make it all zeros by removing simply 2 from the very first box, or from either that contains 4. There you go.
Thank you.
All right, use this strategy. It will always work. You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.